Story: Brahma's Cave. Everyone has one. Sat opposite me was a man in green khakis, a new blue shirt, and a gilet. Both clean. Shaggy beard covered the bottom half of his face, and long hair covered the top and back. Rolled up sleeves exposed injuries on his left wrist. A callous hand held a mirrorless camera with a 50mm lens attached on his lap. Its leather belt coiled around his hand. "Here, boy." Danny reached down, offering his hand to my friend Mortimer, a golden retriever the size of a timber wolf. Mortimer did not budge from his rug. Danny leaned back in the armchair. He noticed me looking at his camera. Old habits. Like to have it on. You never know when something will happen. Funny thing is, I haven't clicked the shutter in over a week now, Danny said. He rested his hands on the arms of the chair. "Are they here?" He looked at me. "I'd like to see them," he said. "Do you know what they are?" Danny smiled. "I call them strings of consciousness. I don't have another name for them." His eyes lowered as if recalling a distant memory. "First time I saw them was in the Middle East. I got myself over there when the explosion started. Israel wanted 1.1 million locals living north of Wadi Gaza to relocate to southern Gaza. This wasn't going to stop anytime soon. I landed, camera to eye, clicking away, image after image. I don't get involved in the politics, but to see what was happening there." Danny nodded. "Something in you shuts you down." Danny touched the back of his head to the left side gingerly. He shook his head. "I documented a family with 3 young children lugging their belongings out of the area. I had the camera to my eye. Pow! A mortar hit. The blast took me off my feet. I fell on my back, whacked my head against a rock or brick or something like that. It was something sharp, I know that. I rubbed my eyes, trying to focus. That's when I saw them. Total chaos, like you see in the movies. Strange thing was, though, each person, even those lying there hurt, had a glowing orb in them. Some sort of string attached to it. The string coiled up their spine and exited their head to the sky. I looked up, trying to see what all these people were connected to. It was like a web, 1 string per person, each one connected beyond the sky. Had to get a proper look. I reached for my camera, kept staring at the sky, trying to see where they were all going. For a second I saw it. The web connected to several different sized orbs way above. Beyond them, a mother orb, way out there. It must have been massive, as it was bigger than the ones closer to me. Crack. Pain seared through my head. I was out. Clean. Danny looked at me. He averted his eyes to the fireplace. He raised his left hand and felt the back of his head. After that, got medevaced home. I looked around, but I couldn't see anything like the strings. It was like I had left that place, or that part of my brain was inaccessible now. Whatever stuck in the back of my head when I fell had been taken out. Danny shook his head again. Finished getting better, and then I was out again, waiting to get back into it. I used my camera all the time, but the images weren't speaking to me anymore. Anything I shot did nothing for me. No, I had to see the strings again. So I had to do something about that. Danny leaned forward, elbow on knees. Everything alive was connected, so I figured I'd start small. Danny turned around and showed me the back of his head. It was this, when I fell. A rod went straight in. It either connected 2 parts of my brain that were not connected before, It put pressure on a section of my brain. I don't know the hows, but it let me see the strings. Danny turned around again and looked at me. I need to see them again. His eyes glazed over. If I stuck another spike in my head, it'd be game over. Not sure what's beyond the veil, so I don't want to do that. Not just yet anyway. Haha. He smirked to himself. I had to start small. No one's gonna miss a few mice. Besides, strings connect living things, right? I went to a pet shop and bought some red-eyed mice. I figured I'd experiment and record my findings. Open them up. See where the strings are. Spoke to a few people, bought some medical equipment, and then stuck a thick needle into the mouse's brain. Had to make sure they were alive, but sedated when I did that. Nothing. Again, nothing. They just kept dying on me. Tried holding one down and pow, needle went in. Squeal. Nothing, it was too small. I watched my recordings. I didn't know what I was doing. It was bullshit. I opened them all up and couldn't see a damn thing. No, I needed something bigger, more brain power. I had swiped my neighbor's cat and did the same thing. It was weird. A cat's brain is not that much bigger than a mouse's. No, next step up would have to be a dolphin or a chimp, but there's no chance of me getting one of those. I called it a day. Danny rubbed his forehead. The mist rolled in. It began to gather around the edges of the room, coiling and spinning, ticking and clicking, gathering. Danny didn't seem to notice. I glanced at Mortimer, who had his head on his paws. He watched it from his rug beside my chair. I couldn't get my mind off it. Nothing else mattered. I lost interest in my job, my girl. Didn't even care if my bills needed paying. I shat on my life because I didn't care. All I wanted was just one more glimpse of the strings. A photojournalist mate was in town. He got in touch and we went for a few beers at the local pub. Beers were the only thing dousing that feeling, you know. I peered at Danny, his hands crunched together. On the way home, saw this homeless guy digging out some industrial bins next to a block of flats. I stopped and watched him. The poor sod was looking for food. I thought I'd better give him some cash, so I went over to hand him a tenner, telling him to get something to eat. Danny looked at me. I saw it, just for a second or two. The orb at his center and the string coming out of his crown. It was like seeing sunlight for the first time. It vanished. I had to see it again. I grabbed the man's throat. Let me see, please. I squeezed harder. He tried to grab my hands. I drew closer, trying to see the tether in his crown. His breath stank. He tried to fight. I squeezed harder. His eyes rolled up. I kept squeezing. His breath left him. The veil lifted for a few seconds more. I could see the fabric of reality. Paradise. Bang, just like that, it was gone. Nothing but darkness. Like I went blind again. I found myself looking at the homeless man's face. Eyes open, but blank. No light. I've seen dead bodies before, but never one I was responsible for. Danny rubbed his temples with his fingertips. The mist rose around the edge of the room, listening, coiling, ready to pounce. Danny did not appear concerned, so I didn't mention it. Felt bad for a bit, but... Danny shook his head, rubbing his temples again. He leaned forward, resting his arms on his thighs. Mist began creeping towards Danny's chair. Mortimer, motionless, watched it. Needed to figure out who I was going to use next. Someone already lost in the community. Nobody misses those guys. There are only one type of people who are the same all over the world. I know, because I photographed them. And they are the homeless. I waited a few days to see if anything came of the man I left behind in the dumpster. Not a peep. I went out the next day. I took a hammer with me. Needed something quick and strong that fitted into my long coat. Around 1 a.m. I went for a walk in the local park. There's sort of a shanty town of homeless folk under the flyover. I knew that if I kept to the outskirts of that place, I'd find one or two of them sitting around or asleep. I walked around on a road across from the local park. Some kid must have been around 17. Thin as a rail, tight jeans and a hoodie, asked me for some money. He offered sex. Poor kid. Sorry. I paid him. We went around this big tree for some cover. He turned around and unbuttoned his jeans as he crouched. I buried the claw of my hammer in his skull. He flopped to the ground. I watched. The orb inside his center mass pulsed. A thin string glistened. It stretched from the orb through his crown, rising into the sky. I looked up as the orb left him. It shot up, rising to the network of strings like a surge of energy. Bang, it was gone. I looked around, couldn't see anything other than the cold night. The kid lay dead on the ground, my hammer still sticking out of his skull. Pulled the hammer, no joy. So I stepped on his shoulder, pulled harder, yank. I got it out, ripping out bits of his skull in the process. I could see his dull brain. I pulled him behind some bushes and left him there and walked away. Black mist coiled around Danny's feet, rising, covering his ankles. And then shins. It kept creeping up. Danny did not seem concerned. He tapped his temple. Little did I know someone saw me. Something from the corner of my eye, movement near the bushes. I thought it was a nocturnal animal, so I dismissed it. But I was wrong. I went prowling again on another night. This time I found a woman sat alone outside her apartment smoking. She wasn't even homeless. I took my hammer to her. She screamed, but I silenced her with a slam of my hammer into the side of her head. I crouched and watched, witnessing the strings once more. It was beautiful. Danny smiled to himself. He averted his eyes to me. I could see the right side of his temple. There was a gaping hole there. It was black, filled with old blood. I didn't think for an instant that what was happening was out of the ordinary, until the woman opened her eyes. She had a gaping hole in the side of her head. Blood was still warm. It made the crisp air visible. She sat up like nothing had happened. She smiled as blood trickled down her cheek. Some went into her eye, but she didn't even flinch. "Hello, you," she said. "I've been watching you. Delightful." A cold shiver ran down my spine. I kept watching her as she looked at me, smiling. "Pray tell, why are you going around destroying these meager morsels?" "Who are you?" I asked. "Someone who can help you see. That is what you want." She told me that she is there, in that place where the strings are visible. She sees them all around her, and that she can help me do that too. She only needs my consent to help me see. I nodded. "Hammer?" She held out her hand. I gave it to her without a second thought. All those years of survival instincts of a photojournalist left me in an instant. I wanted to see the strings. "Are you sure?" she asked me again. "Yes," I said. Whack! She buried the claw of the hammer in my skull. Pain screamed across my mind. I held my temple. The pitch was so high it burst my ears. Blood trickled down Danny's face. He did not move. I looked around for the strings. Nothing. It was all blank. All I could see was the face of the woman I killed, only it wasn't her. It had long fangs with red eyes and black slits, reptile-like. It told me that its name was Zemil, and I was a fool to think I could see the strings. Only the most dedicated souls who gain great insight can see the fabric of reality whenever they choose, I said. Danny rubbed his temple. Blood stained his fingers, drying. It flaked off. Next thing I knew, I was walking through a tunnel, ended up here. Danny looked at me. That thing possessed the woman I killed. Red eyes with black slits, a cross between a lizard and a human. It said its name was Zemil. It marked me. I will see you again, it said. Danny looked at me. What was that thing, do you know? It was a demon. You consented. Now it has marked you. It will visit with you again. Danny looked at the fireplace. Dead for some strings. How crap is that? Danny said. Fabric of reality is intoxicating. Many witness it every day, but only after years of practice and focus that changes the shape of their brain. Thus, the mind. Without that practice, it is too intoxicating. Those that glimpse it in happenstance, like you, go mad. I gestured to the side of his head. He looked down at the mist. It had covered him to his waist. It recognizes you, I said. It's soothing. I thought when I came here, I'd see them, but they're invisible here too. I don't care. I've got a demon on my case. I'm done. I looked at the mist. He's yours. Mist tentacles coiled around Danny, covering him completely. Thorns burst from its tentacles, piercing him all over. Within a flash, the mist was gone. It was back outside, rolling, wafting, turning. It had collected another lost soul. And it was satiated for now. I looked at Mortimer, who was watching me. I agree, old friend. It is too intoxicating. Need great souls to guide the others. But they'll have to wait until those souls reveal themselves. I'm going to the balcony. Coming? I stood up. Mortimer got up too. We turned left out of the lounge and ascended the stairs on the right, climbing up to the balcony. The breeze blew as we walked to the balcony wall. Behind us, the veil shimmered, exposing the entrance to the temple. Its walls loomed over us, tall and long. I looked up at the sky. Closing my eyes, I focused. Exhaling, my third eye opened. The veil lifted. Strings of consciousness became visible. A network connected multiple orbs all over the sky. Beyond them, a large orb, bigger than the sun, loomed in the distance. I looked right to see a white orb. It was at the center of the Divine Mother, who gazed at me. Millions of tethers emanated from her orb, reaching everywhere. I paid my respects with my hands clasped and a gentle bow. I turned my eye to me. A steel blue orb glowed within me. My tether rose through my crown to the sky, connecting to the Divine Mother. Mortimer turned to me. I could see the divinity within him too. His orb glowed amber. I clasped my hands and paid my respects to him. Deep below on the ground, the tethers attached to the mist like glass shards, piercing a black cloud. All lost souls twisting, turning and coiling. All a little dull. Yet nevertheless, there was a bit of a glow there. I exhaled. Closing my third eye, the veil dropped and we were at the halfway house again. It's all about perspective. You just need to learn to see. See you next Sunday at 11, where I will introduce you to another guest. Stay safe. Godspeed.